What is going on, everybody? It's another episode of America's Hometown Horror, and tonight's very special episode of America's Hometown Horror is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. You can find them at podgo.co, that's podgo.co, and be sure to add our podcast, America's Hometown Horror, in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application. Again, that's podgo.co, podgo.co, and mention America's Hometown Horror and how you heard about Podgo section. All right, folks, and if you can hear me and you can see me right now, that means that we are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube for a very, very special episode tonight that I have been looking forward to for quite a while, and here we go. This is a big one tonight. If you're a listener of our show, you know that we are big into haunted attractions of all kinds, but specifically local New England-based haunts. The most notorious haunted attraction in the history of New England is SpookyWorld, which launched in Berlin, Massachusetts back in 1991, almost 30 years ago, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this attraction means a lot to me personally because it's one that I visited every year when I was growing up. I remember the original Haunted Hayride, all of the accompanying attractions that followed it in the years after, like the Phantom Mineshaft, Cirque Macabre, and especially the American Horror Museum, where I have lots of photos in. And I should say right now at the beginning of this podcast that, if you hear barking, it's not because of a lack of professionalism. It's because of our dog that refuses to stay quiet during lots of these live streams. So please forgive Otis, the official dog of America's Hometown Horror. But back to what I was saying, I think it's safe to say that I personally would not be hosting a horror-themed podcast or be the huge horror fan that I am without the experiences that I had at SpookyWorld. And I'm happy to say that right now I am joined by people who feel the same way and are doing an awesome thing to kind of bring SpookyWorld back into the light. And I am joined by three guests, and they are the team behind SpookyWorld, the movie. I am happy to introduce Quinn Monahan, the director of SpookyWorld, the movie, David Bertolino, the original owner of the park and self-proclaimed Hauntrepreneur, and Tony Landry, who is the producer, the host of Spooky 101, which is the podcast dedicated to SpookyWorld, the movie, and also the only person that I know that has a cooler piece of vintage SpookyWorld memorabilia on his wall than I do. So I would like to first and foremost say welcome to all of our guests. I know we are thrilled to have you here with us, guys. How are we all doing tonight?
Great.
Good.
Outstanding. And right out of the gates, I wanted to thank you, Mike. Thank you, Val. Thank you, Andrew, for the support that you have given us. It's been incredible. And I know that we share the same love for that haunted barn out in Berlin 30 years ago. And we're all bringing it back this year in the 30th anniversary.
I appreciate that. You're so welcome. And Tony, I know you and I are kind of kindred spirits here. We back when we first started connecting about potentially collaborating, we both kind of, had a similar super fandom for the old SpookyWorld in Berlin. So it's nice to know that there are a lot of other people out there just like us.
It definitely has a special place in our heart. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. So I should first say that obviously we are live here on Facebook and YouTube. So if you are watching, feel free to drop some questions in, and we'll do our best to answer them. But with that being said, I want to jump right into this here, and I'll put it up to a round table. Quinn, Tony, David, I'll start with you guys. Why make a documentary about SpookyWorld? Quinn, I guess I'll start with you.
Well, I think anybody who ever went to SpookyWorld and knows anything about SpookyWorld knows the answer to that question. SpookyWorld was the first. They arguably launched the entire Halloween haunting industry. Before SpookyWorld, there were scattered little JC's haunts and haunted houses around the country. Of course, Not Scary Farm had Not Scary Farm. But when SpookyWorld happened in the early 90s, David Bertolino took the whole thing to a different level, bringing in elements of celebrities coming in to sign autographs, he will be the first to tell you that 1991 was an auspicious year only because it was the first year. It was certainly not the best year, but that year started the ball rolling. The celebrities came in. You'll learn in our documentary that the trail, the haunted hayride trail, the spooky hayride was less than what it could have been and should have been. You'll hear some very colorful remarks from Tom Savini to that account. But when Tom Savini came on board, a true horror icon at this point, and at that time was revered in the industry, and told David point blank, "Your hayride sucks. You've got to bring that level up because you've promised these fans the best." And David realized that, yeah, he hyped the place, but it wasn't all it could have been and should have been. And Tom Savini stayed on to go on to design the Savini Haunted House and tell him and give him advice about what to do along the trail. And the combination between David Bertolino's vision and Tom Savini's artistic or creative support is what came together to create what Spooky World became.
I love it, and
that's all I got to say on that.
yeah, absolutely. David, what about you? I know obviously you lived this back in the '90s, and you were there back at the park, right from the from the inception, obviously. But what particularly drew you to this project? What made you want to go back and talk about this again in documentary form?
It started as just a little part-time gig because I was a sales manager for a Halloween company, Ruby's Costume Company. And, we became in kind of hiatus mode from August till January. So I thought, let me look into, some Halloween event that I could work on that I'd enjoy. And I explored the opportunity of a hayride with stage sets. And, motivation was not much out there at the time, but we were inspired by various, offshoots of what Quinn talked about, a little fundraiser operation. So I traveled the country in a research mode and miraculously found this dairy farm that was being auctioned off by the FDIC. And I offered to rent it, but, they counter offered by saying, very little money down. That's all I needed to hear. And I could rent it. I can own it for the price of the rental, mortgage payments. And so, my partner and I, Sean Fogarty, sat down and storyboarded 22 stage sets along the hayride trail. Never did we think that it would turn out the way we did. Our intention was this little hayride. And as Tom Savini would said, change the name right now. It's no longer Spooky Hayrides. We're Spooky Land or Spookyville or Spooky World. Bingo. Change the name to World. And that was the second week of October. We literally changed the name because our intention was from that point on to add haunted houses every year, to add a spectacular new event. And that's what we did.
That's great. And I have to say, I was a huge fan of the name change. And Tony, I've heard you mention this before, but, to me as a kid growing up in New England, born in the mid 80s and growing up in the 90s, this actually felt to me like the Disney World of New England. Every single year I would look forward to hearing, the advertisements on the radio, seeing the commercials on TV. And I just knew that it was Halloween time once Spooky World was back up in the conversation. So I'm a fan. It gave it that larger feel, I think, with Spooky World. So huge fan of the name change. Tony, what's this process been like for you, and why did you want to jump on board, and what's it been like for you since you did?
It's I think that one of the underlying themes that you're going to see in the film when it comes out is the serendipity that took place. All of these things had to come together exactly the right way in order for Spooky World to succeed. And the same holds true for the process of making this film. every guy has this box of memories that they hold on to no matter where they move to, when they leave their house growing up, to when they go to college, to when they move into their first home. And sometimes you lose things along the way. And my story here with this film started with a button. I literally lost a button that says, I think I saw Elvis at Spooky World. And of course, if you lose something, where do you go nowadays? Not the lost and found. You go to eBay.
eBay. Yep.
So I went on eBay, found the pin, but when I did the search for Spooky World, it populated up this list of items that I couldn't believe. And I looked at the seller's name, and it just so happened to be Spooky Dave. And from there, we started striking up conversation, reliving some memories, and that kind of came home with me. And from
Jealous.
there, well, you're more than welcome to come over here, man. After we all get our shots, we're good to go. Come on over. Doors open for you.
I'd love to see the studio. Continue, though.
Absolutely.
I apologize.
But what ended up happening was the film started taking off. I got a phone call from David a couple of years ago and said, hey, we need to interview you for this. You're our fan. You're one of our biggest fans. And I said, absolutely. Come on over to my home. I go, the sign's here. You might as well get that on film. So as we started talking, and after the interview, Quinn and David said, we're leaving back for LA on Monday. Most of this operation is taking place in Boston. You seem to know what you're doing. You have, your toe dipped in the shallow end of the pool of filmmaking. David did the same thing when it came to the people who worked at Spooky World back in the day. He identified passionate people, he empowered them, and it took off from there. And that's why Spooky World succeeded. And I think that that's why this film is going to do exactly the same. He put his trust in me. Quinn put their trust in me. And I think that we're doing an okay job so far. And I think that we have a lot more amazing things ahead of us.
I would say more than okay. I mean, I know I personally can't wait to see what you guys have in store. And, you've done a great job kind of teasing everything with the Spooky 101 podcast. It's been very entertaining. And as I mentioned before, before we started recording, I, for one, cannot wait to see what you guys have in store with this movie. So, David, I guess I have to ask you, what's it been like to see the legacy of all your hard work become enshrined in this upcoming movie? And I mean, did you ever think that the work you did at Spooky World would have the impact that it did, even to this day?
I have to tell you, I am every day stunned. Quinn Monahan has done 74 interviews, and some of them I bared witness in person, some on Zoom, some I have not seen or didn't see, but I've seen since then. And I'm blown away at the impact that these folks had, either working at the park or celebrityhood signing at the park. And they speak with such passion. I get goosebumps and get teary-eyed when I hear the stories of, this was the best job I've ever had in my life. This is the best time period of my life. This was one big happy family, not like the Mansons, of course, but they really enjoyed their experience in this film. And so I'm just blown away at the commentary that I've heard in the last year and a half, actually, it's going on now. But we've got just some phenomenal interviews. And some of the celebrities are kind of tearing up, talking about what's their favorite place. They've worked in various movies. They've worked for Universal Studios and other places such as that. And they speak so kindly and sweetly of their life at Spooky World. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I have to say, just to comment on what you said before. So Tony and I had talked about this at one point, but kind of like my local haunt growing up, the one closest to me that I love just a notch below Spooky World was Barrett's Haunted Mansion in Abington, Mass. And I had the privilege of working there one October a couple of years back. And it was so much fun. But I have to say, you got to be a little bit crazy if you want to voluntarily show up and scare people for multiple nights in October. It definitely creates a bond between people. So I can see why people still hold that, so close in their memories, for sure.
Sweet. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had...
So I guess...
there was, I don't know if you recall, Prozac the Clown at Barrett's. I think his name is Rob.
I do remember that, actually.
He was one of our top actors. You know, a lot of folks headhunted actors at our place. You know, some for Broadway, some for movies. Others went on for special effects, you know, with TV shows and film projects. And, you know, we launched just a lot of ships. It's just wonderful to hear about. It's, you know, you get somebody in the interview seat and they say, my career started at SpookyWorld when I was 17 years old. And it's like, what? You got to be kidding me. And now they're big stars. Phenomenal.
Big tease on that one. If you folks like Marvel films, a guy who does that.
Oh, really?
May be in our documentary.
Wow. Wow. That's all I can say about
Oh,
that
he'll
one.
be in our documentary.
Safe to say that he is inevitable.
Just like SpookyWorld, the movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, so I know you guys are just kind of talking about all of the interviews that you've done, and you kind of already made this comment, but I know you said there were a lot of emotional reactions to people that, you know, had a connection to this in the past, whether they worked there or fans. But I mean, has there been anything else, Tony and Quinn, that has really surprised you about these interviews? I mean, you know, anything that you experienced that you weren't necessarily expecting when you were interviewing these people?
Quinn, take that.
Well, I'll let Tony take this.
Well, a couple of years
Tony?
ago, when they handed off the reins to me for the East Coast side of things, they left town just before the Great Rock and Shock convention was taking place. And a couple of people who were appearing had a very close connection to SpookyWorld. You're going to see Kane Hodder in it. Kane, for those who have met Kane, he's a ribber. He likes to have fun with you. He has that Jason, like, I'm Jason, tough guy attitude. But when it came to speaking about SpookyWorld, we actually saw Kane open up. He loved his time there. He spoke about it so glowingly. I was shocked. It was so great to be able to sit down with him. And actually the person who filmed it is another local filmmaker. He had camera duty that day. Survival of the Film Freaks, if you folks have seen that. Bill Fulkerson helped me out with that one.
Yep.
A great documentary. If you go, that's a sidetrack if you folks get a chance. But Kane was outstanding. And Adam Green also sat down with us for that. Another local kid done well. And Adam and Kane ended up from starting off at SpookyWorld, meeting each other as kids, to all of a sudden making the Hatchet movies together. So you're going to see how all of this came together. And it was so cool to be able to put everybody back into the 90s. And I think that's another thing that this film's going to capture is we're so connected right now. I mean, look at what we're doing. We are able to sit in our homes and have this interview. Back in the 90s, part of the ambiance of SpookyWorld was how far it was away from the major cities, how isolated you felt, how that fourth wall was broken when you were on that hayride, when they would come up to you and come out to you. So we're going to get into the whole 90s experience with this as well. And Quinn really has his ear tuned to that.
That's awesome to hear.
If I could just jump in to expand on that. One of the strongest impact of a commentary that really made us move forward on this documentary was I was sitting home watching Seth Meyers a couple of years ago, Halloween night. And they usually have a celebrity come out for a segment and chat, and then they move on to the next celebrity. So in studio was John Krasinski. And Seth Meyers said, well, fellow New Englander, do you have any memories of Halloween in New England? And his response was, actually, my best memories as a child was every October going to a place called SpookyWorld. And he turned to Seth, because Seth's from New Hampshire, and he says, do you remember SpookyWorld? And Seth said, you know, we were talking about that pre-interview in the dressing room, and some of my staff remembers it. I don't remember it. Tell me more about it. Well, I got to tell you, he told so much glowingly about how much he enjoyed the place, came year after year. And he was a kid then. And, it's just so incredible. And they came back after a break and gave another segment about Spooky World. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And that kind of, pushed me forward. It was Quinn's idea to move forward with this thing. And that kind of, gave me a charge to say, okay, this really did have an impact on people. Let's continue to move forward on this idea. But that was just an amazing endorsement for this fellow to, and he talked about various incidents that happened, which are right. That's in the actual movie now.
Okay, so I'm so glad you brought that up, because I actually did have this written down to ask you, because I knew that if anyone knew if this actually did happen, it was going to be you, David. And obviously the story that Krasinski told on that show was that he saw some Boston dad with his son that was clearly more scared than the kid to go into one of the haunted houses, and he ended up punching Dracula in the face. So
Yes.
did that actually happen?
It did actually happen, and I paid for the missing tooth. His fellow's name was Barry, and he was not a young kid. He was an older man. He played Dracula in the Savini house, and he actually got cold cocked by a dad. And
Wow.
so he alerted a policeman. They stopped. There was no, we called it an accident. Everyone was okay with it being an accident, and poor Barry lost a tooth over it. And so our workman's comp had a nice jump that year. And it was, but it made for an interesting story live on Seth Meyers' Late Show.
I know that is, I heard that, and I thought that was definitely one of those stories where they kind of added like the Boston element to kind of make it seem a little bit more extreme and throw in the accents. And I was like, I wonder if this actually happened. So I'm glad to hear that it actually did.
Oh yeah.
So that's,
if I can add a little something about that.
Sure.
If I might add just a little something about that, that was not an isolated incident. One of the things I've learned during this documentary is that many of the cast members in the various haunted houses and on the Hayride Trail were regularly hit, punched, kicked, assaulted by the attendees at Spooky World, because they were so good and so frightening and people just didn't know what to expect. For most people, this was the first time they'd been to anything like it. Somebody jumps in your face and says boo, or comes at you with a running chainsaw, muscle memory takes over and boom. So these guys learned to get tough real quick, and there were many such shall we say skirmishes in the houses and on the trail, and you'll learn about that in the documentary.
I can't wait to hear more of those stories, and I'm sure there are probably many more than that just that one. Excuse me, but I guess while we're on the celebrity component of Spooky World, I did have some questions about this here, and Tony, to your point, having met Kane Hodder twice in my life, once being at Spooky World, I have a red hockey mask that was signed by Kane Hodder that I got there when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And then Kat and I actually had the pleasure of meeting him up in Salem a few years back, and he was super nice. We have a picture with him, and it was great to meet him again later in life. So that was really cool. But I guess, David, when Spooky World first opened, you did have a lot of support from some pretty big celebrities. So obviously we talked about Tom Savini, but you also had appearances from many others like Elvira, Linda Blair, Alice Cooper, and obviously Kane Hodder. How big of an impact do you think it had to have that type of celebrity backing when the park first opened? How much did that contribute to the success, you think?
Well, the celebrities were one component, but I think it was a very special component because there were no attractions that were celebrities except for Knott's Scary Farm. So, we were thrilled to have more than the one celebrity. We had 3 or 4 each week, and we would, as you remember, we would rotate them. We would have different celebrities each week, and that would encourage people to come back week after week. And, clearly the object was to change and add to the show every year. But then the other element was, can you make it fresh every week during a 1 month period? And we managed to do that with the new celebrities. And so that worked out well. Yeah.
David,
That's great.
Was there any celebrity that you did meet that just kind of stood out to you more so than the other ones, or was it just kind of, they were all just, you were starstruck by all of them?
All of them were different. The ones that you thought would be very cooperative and helpful and so forth, and most of them were. I'm going to say 90% of our visiting celebrities we treated like part of the family. I mean, they checked into a hotel suite. They got, basket of goodies. We sent over wine. We sent over, all kinds of perks. We'd send a limo for them. I mean, we treated them like celebrityhood, like they were going to their Hollywood premiere. And I tell you, the guest visiting to get their autograph they're extremely, very enthusiastic, more so than the Hollywood fans. The Hollywood fans are so used to seeing, Captain Kirk at Gelson's supermarket, that, it's a natural thing to them. But back in Boston, or the Boston suburbs, to have 3 or 4 celebrities, your favorite horror celebrities in front of you, it's, overwhelming experience. And as you said, Alice Cooper, Dee Snider, and even the media were celebrities. Willard Scott doing the weather, 3 different hits. There was, I don't know if you remember, Rhonda Shear. She did a live show up all night, broadcasted from Spooky World. And of course, the Tonight Show, Jay Leno with the roving reporter Bill Maher on our stage live.
We actually watched that clip when we were prepping for this episode. We watched all of those, so it's just insane. Yeah, insane to see all that.
It definitely added, but it also, as I've told, Quinn loves when I mention this. It was a Fellini movie. There was lots of stuff going on. There was, haunted attractions, 6 haunted houses, as you mentioned earlier, the American Horror Museum with original props and displays from the movies. And then, of course, the signature hayride. And, even in the waiting lines, we built stages where performers would, do their act. And, granted, some of it wasn't horrorish. We had a barbershop quartet because they would work for scale. And we would have, various contortionists and singers and dancers. But we would just add to the mix. It was one big circus. It's
awesome. Yeah, I remember, I have to find them at my parents' house somewhere, but I have Polaroid photos of myself as a kid with the Pumpkinhead model that you guys had in the American Horror Museum. And I think there was one from The Howling as well, a werewolf, if I remember correctly. I think I have both of those photos. But, since we were just talking about celebrities, I have to ask what it was like working with fellow son of Boston and also the writer of the song that Elvis Presley called the single worst thing he'd ever heard in his life, or something like that. Bobby Boris Pickett himself, who I saw at Spooky World several times growing up.
Bobby is this, he wrote and sang literally the Halloween national anthem, the Monster Mash. And, we made a little, I don't know if you ever saw that little movie, the VHS.
I have.
Visit to Spooky World. We sold that in the gift shop. And we added Bobby, singing live at Spooky World as in the segment there. And I remember showing it to Spencer Gifts and iParty, and they loved it so much. We sold 24,000 copies of that with Bobby in it, and so Bobby got a great residual. Being in our VHS tape of a visit to. I never thought this tape would sell outside of Spooky World. I think I was going to order 500 or 600 pieces, and then I pre-showed it, previewed to those 2 chains. And we literally distributed 24,000 copies throughout the country. And Bobby was, a part of that. He was very helpful. He did 3 shows a night. But, basically, he was on the stage for probably 5 or 10 minutes because he himself would admit, now, folks, I'm going to do a medley of my one hit. And, but he didn't make no bones about it. He was, now on the flip side of that, Tiny Tim would go on for a 10-minute gig, and he would stay on for 30 or 40 minutes. And many times, you know, he's scheduled for 3 shows a night, and he would do 5 or 6 shows. He'd do once an hour from 6 o'clock at night.
Yep.
And so he was a real troubadour, as we say.
That's awesome. And I have definitely seen a YouTube rip of that VHS video several times, I can say. And my one regret is not owning a copy myself, because I do miss that. So that's actually a perfect segue into a question that I had for you guys, you know, Quinn, Tony, David. I know obviously we're going to see in the movie, we're going to see a lot of, you know, interviews, a lot of footage with people that actually worked there and had gone there. Can viewers of this movie expect to see more, you know, on hayride footage, more footage that are in the haunted attractions? If you can share, I would love to hear more about that.
Quinn.
Oh, well, I can talk about that a little bit. That was honestly one of my biggest concerns going into this project. Do we have the footage to cover the story? Because it's great to hear all these stories, but you can't have a documentary with talking heads telling you how great it was without seeing how great it was. And so we spent the better part of 2 years digging out some of these clips. We just recently acquired some terrific digital video footage, original digital video, which digital video was just emerging as a technology in the mid-90s. And some people had the good sense to start shooting some of the Spooky World attractions with digital video. And while it's not high def like we have today, it's damn good. What I started off working with was a lot of 2nd and 3rd and 4th generation VHS tapes that had seen better days in the 90s. These are most of these tapes are 30 years old, and I'm sure we have a lot of VHS fans out there who know what happens to VHS tapes after 30 years. So that was our biggest challenge. But yes, the short answer to your question is you will see and get a sense of many, if not all, of the major attractions in Spooky World. With one caveat that we may never be able to fully experience what it was like to go through the Tom Savini house or be on the original hayride in Berlin. But that's my job, is to get as close to what it felt like to be there for the audience as possible. And what you may not know, you probably do know this, but what people may not know in general is that there are fans of Spooky World who were born after Spooky World closed, who have learned about Spooky World on the internet and through the folklore of Spooky World, and are the 2nd generation of fans. Maybe their parents went there, or maybe they just discovered about it. But it has taken on a life of its own. There is a mythology that surrounds Spooky World, and we're going to talk about all of that in the film.
That's great to hear. And that's just awesome. I can't wait, because I was wondering that, because, you know, with some of the more popular haunted attractions in the country at this point, so like, let's say, you know, Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando or Hollywood decides they want to do a haunted house based on Halloween or, you know, Alien or whatever movie they choose. Generally, the night after it opens, there's some, you know, POV video, somebody walking through the haunt. You can see it, you can experience it, but the footage of Spooky World that's on YouTube or wherever is rare. So I'm super excited to hear that. That's great.
It really comes across it like a found footage type thing, you know, and I think that there's something special about that, because it's so hard to find that it makes it even more special. So
yeah.
I know, and you know, pulling the curtain back a little bit, I've had the privy of seeing some of the things that Quinn has put together, and you folks are going to be in for a treat. This man, if you don't know any of Quinn's background, let me tell you about it right now, because he's not going to say it, but I will. Quinn is a producer for the Academy Awards and SAG. Okay. He's got street cred like you wouldn't believe. He was in the movie Carrie. He was a set designer for A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. So if we're looking for the right guy to do this, we've got him. And that's the amazing part about this film. They understand the history and the importance of things. And I think that one of the things we also understand is it's situational awareness. The 90s, we did not have iPhones or the digital technology that we have now,
Yep.
where everybody can just whip it out and there you go. I'm videotaping absolutely everything, you know? I think that the fact that we are making so much out of the little old school footage we have, it's going to be special. And Quinn is taking it and putting a modern twist on it that you're going to love.
That's
You know, I'd be
phenomenal to hear.
remiss if I didn't in this venue. I'd be remiss in this venue if I didn't. Even though we have come upon some great footage, I know that there's got to be some viewers right now who have a videotape of Spooky World in a drawer somewhere in their home. We want that footage. If you have something that you think belongs in this film, whether it's footage or still photos, please contact us through this show, through this website. The information will get to us, and you'll be a part of Spooky World lore forever. Anybody who contributes footage to us will have their name in the credits, and they'll be forever in our gratitude. So there you have it. There's my appeal for.
Wow, you hear that,
anything else
folks?
that might be out there.
You too
Yeah,
can be
right?
part of Spooky World the movie. That's awesome. If you have footage out there, you can absolutely you can send it in and you can have your name in the credits. So I would say if you're sitting on that footage, what are you waiting for? Send it over. Send it over
Yeah,
for sure.
we need it. We want it.
Excellent.
We need it. Share it with the world.
Awesome. So Tony, from a fan to a fan, I know you and I have connected over Spooky World fandom leading up to this, and what's it been like to work on something that's had such a huge impact on you growing up?
It has brought me back to a lot of great memories and family. I think that we're going to touch on the note of family in this film because the family that worked behind the scenes to make this come to fruition. Spooky World's vision was based off of family, the Bertolino family. You're going to find out that David Bertolino didn't start at Spooky World. David started with his dad and his brother at Little Jack Horner's Joke Shop in downtown Boston back in the day, which then turned into the place where everyone in the region got their Halloween costumes at Boston Costume. David Bertolino is Boston Costume, and that turned into Spooky World. So you're going to be learning the history of this man and how this all came to fruition. But the family aspect in regards to me, I wasn't old enough to drive when I first heard that jingle on the school bus. I had to rely on my uncle. He was like my father figure. So my uncle's no longer with me, but I feel like working on this film, I feel connected again with him. And it's my way of saying, hey, thanks for bringing this into my life and having this film to come to fruition. And the amazing part is these two guys on both sides of me on your screen have become family to me. We have lived our lives the past 2 years, for the most part, with each other bi-coastally. They've been there through good and bad, good health, bad health. We've been there through everything. So you're going to see family touched upon probably throughout the whole part of this. You're going to see some interviews take place where we're talking about some of this, how it emotionally hits people. And I'm not the only one who's lost somebody who brought them to Spooky World. You're going to be talking to a few people and seeing a few people tell their stories of their bonds with their family members going there back to Berlin and even Foxborough.
That's powerful. That's awesome to hear. I can't state enough how much I love what I'm hearing, and it's just giving me that much more hype for this movie coming out this fall. So I have to ask you guys, obviously, Tony, I know you and I were talking about this beforehand, but obviously Spooky World was very clearly ahead of its time. And I think that a lot of haunted attractions today have, pulled bits and pieces from Spooky World. And, I guess just, in a general sense, how much of an impact do you think Spooky World, the original one in Berlin, had on the haunt industry today? And I'll open that up to whoever wants to answer.
Well, I'll answer that. I want to answer it because I'll say it's immeasurable. The people that we've talked to, like Sydney Neal, who is a goddess in her own right in the haunting attraction world, flat out says the industry wouldn't be like what it has become without Spooky World. Many people have echoed that sentiment, that it's hard to calculate how much the success of Spooky World sort of launched the industry. You have to remember that the Wall Street Journal came knocking in the first year because they got wind of how much money, let's be honest, Spooky World was making. That thousands of people were pouring into this tiny little farm in central Massachusetts, and they were taking notice. And so lots of other people saw that Wall Street Journal article and said, this sounds like something I could do in my state. And from there, the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean that totally makes sense to me, because I honestly I think like I mentioned, it was way ahead of its time, and you can clearly see that other haunts. I don't think there would be, especially in the New England area and throughout the country, as many haunted attractions that have succeeded as much as they have without Spooky World doing what it did back in the 90s.
If I could mention something here.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're going over in our interview, Sydney Neal, we're going to be having on Spooky 101 coming up on most fitting day and most fitting weekend possible, Mother's Day, because she is the mother of the haunt industry. So we're going to have her on for that weekend. But what Sydney and what others have mentioned who are in the haunt industry, there's a certain weekend that took place at a convention back in the early 90s that David took part in that kind of was a game changer for the entire haunt industry. David, could you elaborate just a little bit on that? We want to leave some meat on the bone so everybody tunes in this fall.
Yeah, I in my sales manager role at Ruby's Costume, I am at the it wasn't even called the Halloween convention at that point. It was still the Trans World variety show, merchandise show. And there was a little section of 2 or 3 aisles of people who sold Halloween goods, and I was there populating with various props and costumes that I had. And, many of the haunters, mostly fundraiser types from all over the country, that I was in the Ruby's booth, or they saw the article in the Wall Street Journal or USA Today or whatever. And so they came around to the booth saying, "Hey, can I have a minute of your time? How did you do this? What insurance company did you use? How did you build?" And, after a day of this, I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what, everybody. Come to my hotel room at 7 o'clock at the Marriott, and here's the room number, and a handful of us, and we'll talk about, I'll answer all the questions you have, and we can all share ideas." Well, 40 or 50 people showed up in this little hotel room. I mean, it looked like a very tight Woodstock bathroom. And so that was, I'd like to say, the birthplace of the Haunted House Association in the industry. We formed a group, and they were advisors, and I never wanted to be a board member, but I was always willing to open my door for advice. And that was, as many had called it, the first day that we launched an organized Haunted House Association industry. And, it was predicated on my just 1 year experience, although it was a crazy 1 year. Financially, everybody was watching us. In fact, here's an open question. You folks look like my age, 30 some odd years ago. I'm in my 30s. I've got a family. I want to do this little hayride. And sometimes you do things with your heart and not with your wallet. You don't think about the return on it. And so my heart got in the way, and I really had this goal to do this, event. And I sat down with my partner and I said, "What's it going to take to break even?" And we figured it out on paper. "David, if you do 200 people a night for 31 nights on average, we will break even." And, to make a long story short, you can see how that was, we went from 2.2. Is it all in the movie? But just briefly, the first night we did 2,000 people, and we never did less than 2,000 people. We did over 60,000 people that first year. And then our top years, you know, as we moved to Foxborough, and I partnered with the New England Patriots Kraft family, we were doing 10 to 12,000 people a night. And that was just, couldn't believe it.
Insane.
I'm blown away by that, you know, just looking at that in my past like that.
I had a chance to acquire from David some of the sheets from annual attendance and things of that sort. And it's completely mind-blowing just how successful the Spooky World was on paper. I mean, we know how it is emotionally. It was a success. Spooky World has influenced everyone. We're proud. It's our hometown haunt. But when you actually see the numbers on paper is when you know that it was real.
Oh, I'm sure, and I can speak from experience there, because I know that a good chunk of my youth was spent standing in line for the hayride in Berlin, and also at not even Gillette Stadium, at Foxborough Stadium back then. So I can only imagine what those numbers might look like. So actually, that brings me to a question I had for you guys. So I'm sure you probably have been back to the old stomping grounds out in Berlin for this movie, but how much footage can we expect to see from the old original Spooky World location in Berlin in the upcoming movie? And I know Kat had a follow-up question.
We had plenty. If I can, we had plenty of. We shot funny bit. The day David and I flew out and got there, we had arranged for a drone camera to shoot a lot of aerial footage flying around, and we were going to get the footage on the ground. And we set up this shot, and we had the members of the old crew walking toward the drone, and the shot was the drone was pulling away from them as they and the drone flew right into the side of the barn and exploded into bits. And we'll have a little bit of that in the film. But subsequently, we went and had somebody else shoot a lot of drone footage. Of course, if you go on YouTube, you know there's no shortage of people just breaking into the place and filming themselves running around and the abandoned site, and that's a lot of fun. You have genuine fans making a pilgrimage to the site. But yeah, you'll see plenty of that in glorious high def.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
Kat, I know you had a question about the old location in Berlin.
I did actually, yeah. So, you know, you always see these abandoned like amusement parks or abandoned roller coasters, and they're kind of creepy and eerie if you see any YouTube videos. Have you seen or heard of any sort of like ghost stories or creepy stories now that the building is abandoned and just kind of left there?
Can I take this one? We actually have a couple of interviews that. Did you know that somebody actually lived on the premise there while Spooky World was in Berlin? Well, there was a caretaker who lived there, and he has a couple of stories to offer in regards to that back in the 90s, and you'll get a kick out of it. I'll say that.
I mean, that's not surprising. That's from what, the 1700s, or 1800s, that building. The old farmhouse.
The old Tyler farm. It's actually a historic landmark. And we actually just got some footage. Had to wait for the snow to melt a little bit this year, but I went right around the corner. It's actually going to be a part of the story that David and Tom Savini tell about one late night. Tom calls up David and says, "Wake up, we got to go do something." And I'm going to leave it right there.
Okay.
Good teaser.
I love that tease. I love that tease.
Hey, come on. I got it. It's only April, folks. We're only halfway there, right?
Halfway to Halloween. That's why you guys are pros. You know what you're doing. So, Tony, what can we expect from Spooky 101 in the coming months leading up to the release of the movie?
A lot of baggy eyes from editing, coffee drinking, things of that nature. All a labor of love. We're going to have, like I said, we have this coming Friday, we have Bart and Barb O'Brien, who actually own one of the most successful vineyards in Napa Valley, who were influenced. They're billionaires. Spooky World, of course. Spooky World helped influence them back in the day. We're going to have them on. They actually took a trip out from California to visit Spooky World, started their own haunt in Northern California in the 90s. And they're going to talk about how David helped them with that. Like we said, Sydney Neal, I can't wait for that one to come out. That's going to be a long form interview. I think that Sydney predates David in the haunt industry. But she understands just how much David changed the game, and she is going to elaborate on that. Also, upcoming in the near future, we have quite a few other folks from the haunt industry, but we're going to sprinkle in a few familiar faces that may have signed an autograph or two at Spooky World as we get closer. And I do know somebody over, hold on, let me get it right. That shoulder has a book coming out in September, and would love to hear what she has to say about her book.
Well, that's certainly very interesting.
We would love
Excellent.
to hear that. We'll just
Excellent.
dangle that carrot out there.
Sure. Why not? Hey, so we have a question that just popped in from YouTube from Keith Fashawn, and he is wondering, and since you guys were just out there on the property recently doing some footage, he wonders if there might still be some parts of the old attractions in the buildings that are out there.
Well, I'll say this. Up until just a few years ago, there were some things, but it seems that in the last couple of years, just about any vestige of the old Spooky World that wasn't nailed down tight has gone bye-bye.
See, just the hint of this movie being considered 2 years ago got a lot of people to kind of help themselves to souvenirs at the old property. And then in the last year that we announced that we're doing it and full steam ahead, all of a sudden the collectible market for Spooky World memorabilia has gone through the roof. The resale prices are incredible. And so people have bought up all kinds of memorabilia of Spooky World, and they're getting top dollar for it now. So it's a highly desirable collectible.
Yeah.
Original pieces.
I can speak to that. David, you might actually audibly gasp if I tell you what that poster that you made back in the early 90s went for on eBay when I found it a couple of months ago. So I can relate to it.
Unfortunately,
I want to hear what it went for.
So it was let's say it was almost $30.
Wow.
Not terrible. I gladly paid
I was expecting a lot more. I was like,
yeah. But yeah.
Well. Listen, if anybody wants to have a little bit of Spooky World, there's still things available on eBay. David, do you still have anything up on eBay from Spooky World?
The dealers have bought it up. You know what I'm surprised, and I don't get this. Well, maybe you fellows have a good, viewpoint on this. I always considered Spooky World a New England thing. And then I walk into stores when I moved here to California. You walk into Dark Delicacies or Blast from the Past, Burbank, West Hollywood, and Spooky World memorabilia, original stuff. Of course, selling for top dollar, but it's a desirable market even for people who hadn't visited Spooky World. I'm kind of blown away by that.
It was such an iconic
I'm
logo.
guessing
That when you see that Reaper and you see that font, you immediately go back to the 90s. You immediately remember what it was like there. And I think that's a testament.
You're talking about this Reaper right here?
That
Here
guy
he is.
right
The one you
there.
mean?
That guy.
Tony, I couldn't agree more. Agree more.
It is. It is an important symbol to the haunt industry, that logo right there. That font, I mean, come on. That 30 years later, people still like, oh my God, I remember Spooky World. I remember going through the hayride. I remember Tromaville. Speaking of which, our friends over at Troma, Lloyd Kaufman, we're going to be heading to Troma Fest, or their Troma Dance Film Festival at Mahoning Drive-In in Pennsylvania in June. If you want to see us there from Spooky World, the movie, we'll be there supporting our friends. If you haven't seen the Slashing yet from Troma, keep an eye out for it. Lloyd's always putting out great content. Uncle Lloyd,
yeah. He was great on Spooky 101, by the way. He had me laughing the entire time. It was phenomenal.
You laughing? I could barely do the interview.
Yeah, that must have been tough. That must have been tough to keep it straight the whole time, I have to say. Credit to you, my friend.
It's an easy. He makes it easy. Lloyd just makes it easy. And he also is very perceptive as to who's interviewing them, if they understand the material or not. And he can either make it easy or difficult. And I like it when he challenges people. But for me, walk in the park. I love that man. That's why Uncle Lloydie, that's what he's always known as.
That's great. Kat, Andrew, I know I've been asking a lot of questions. Do you guys have anything you want to ask our panel here?
I actually had a question for Tony, seeing all of your memorabilia in the background. What's your favorite Spooky World piece?
I mean,
out of your collection?
Why state the obvious?
I was going to say, it might be the sign, but...
Actually, there's my original goal from taking a lot of things off of David's hands were, what did Indiana Jones used to say? It belongs in a museum.
Yep.
I felt that when David was selling his items, that they should be under one roof and that they should be displayed to show for historic purposes. So I have a lot of items from David, state citations, awards from the governor, awards from haunt industry. I even have, and I have the blueprints for Spooky World. I have also one of my favorite things is the renderings for the first sign, which did not have the Reaper. It had a hockey mask. So I actually have the artist renderings of that framed. And that, if aside of the sign, it would be probably that, because it predates that iconic logo.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Andrew, Kat, anything else you want to ask?
I don't really have a question. I never really got to go to Spooky World as a kid. And I went for my first time last year, which, during COVID, didn't really get to have the best experience that you could to really experience it. But watching some of the Spooky 101 and listening to you guys talk about it, and just the passion and the energy, it's just palpable between, listening to just your experiences and everything that went on there, that it can't help but make me feel regret and just upset that I never got the chance to experience such an amazing time in history for haunted attractions, and I missed out on that. And so that's why I really can't wait to see the documentary, because I feel like maybe I'll be able to gain a little bit of, feeling from that you guys have, that Mike has, and just upsetting that I wasn't able to experience that as a kid. So
I had a window.
Well, we're going to do our best, and that.
Go, Quinn.
Go ahead.
No, I
was going to say we're going to do our best to do that.
I know he will. From the clips that I have had the chance to see, I felt like I went back in a DeLorean, hit 88 miles an hour, and was back on River Road in Berlin, Mass. I can tell you right now, as a horror fan, from what I've seen and the job that Quinn has done, you are going to feel like you were there. If you had never experienced it, I promise you that you will. And legends never die.
That's awesome.
Andrew, I'm excited for you, my friend. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. Better late than never, right?
Yeah, better late than never, for sure. So I guess just to kind of to put a bow on this, you guys. So when this movie is released in the fall, where can we find it? Rough idea of when it will be released. Is there going to be merch available? Eventual Blu-ray or DVD release? I'll let you guys comment away on that.
Well, the terms of the deal, we actually have two active participants of distribution. And one specializes very much in the horror field, and the other is in 192 countries. So it's a matter of where we're going with its entirety, whether there's going to be merchandise from us or through them. I'm sure there will be. But now we have a third player involved, a very accomplished, I don't want to give names, but I mean,
Don't give
basically
names.
we've been under negotiation with a very recognized director locally who is creating a Squirrel TV series. And so it's a scripted series, and we're exploring all the opportunities surrounding that. And so, of course, the movie will be first, but this could be part of the same package of distribution.
Wow, breaking news. That is
Yeah,
phenomenal.
I got a new 4K camera. I don't know if you can see the goosebumps because I kind of may have heard a few of these conversations, and it's going to be worth the wait, folks. I do know that this week, our good buddy Joel Robinson, who you may be familiar with his artwork on many of the Universal re-releases from Scream Factory and from conventions, one of the nicest guys on the planet, he has actually been enlisted to do our teaser and our one sheet and the covers for our, if we have a hard copy. I can't wait for him to bring that to you. Some of the ideas that we have are going to hit the new notes and the old notes. And I think it's important that we have all of that together.
Awesome.
All right.
Wow. Well, this has just made me even more excited over the last hour than I was prior, which, I mean, I was already through the roof. So this has just been so enlightening and so great to talk to you guys about this. But I don't really have any other questions, but is there anything else that you three, the creative team behind Spooky World, the movie, want to put out there in the ether? Anything else that you want to tease? Any other information you want to give?
It's coming. It's soon to be released. Yeah, there's actually some very significant celebrity tie-ins and interviews that are in the editing room and just waiting for releases and so forth. So we promise that you will be one of the first to hear.
Patience, Michael. Patience.
Hey, I'm just providing an avenue for people to get information out here. I'm totally not at all asking for myself or anybody else.
No.
For anyone that's listening,
David, repeat that last part for us.
I was just saying Tom Savini is executive producer of the project.
Yes, that is phenomenal. That is great.
Yeah, and let's all wish Tom well in his recovery from his recent little mishap on his bicycle. But I'm told that he's recovering nicely.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I was just thinking that when you guys mentioned it. Obviously we all wish him nothing but the best and a speedy recovery as well.
I'm
of
sorry.
course, he'll be in our film.
I'm still zoning out because David's just teasing me over his shoulders with all of that original Clive Barker artwork.
Is that what that is?
Yes, forgive me. I have a little dashboard in front of me. That's pretty cool, though. I didn't notice that at first.
Yeah. Clive lives nearby, and he had a flood in his storage area a couple of years ago. And so he called me and asked if he can borrow. I purchased 11 pieces from him. You mentioned earlier the American Horror Museum. These populated the American Horror Museum. And so I loaned them to Clive, and he made a 20-piece edition of each of these. And so they're reproductions, but they're original reproductions, I guess they call. But these are his originals that appeared. And so I just put them up. You asked if I had them on eBay. This collection actually is up on eBay now.
Oh,
So
okay.
for the first time, I'm offering the entire collection and selling it off.
So not only are these original, I just want to remind people, not only these original Clive Barker artworks, but they hung at the American Horror Museum in Spooky World. So there's that lore behind them as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Well, you heard
Oh, now
you
we're gonna
heard it
get
here
a
first.
close-up.
Dear Lord.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's got a few of them. And the cool part is that America's Horror Museum, that was the closest that we had to anything like that in our area back in the day. And to know that those hung up in there, that just brings me back.
That's crazy.
Wow.
David,
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is really
David
cool.
disappear?
Actually,
hey David, David, are you
Yes.
are you willing to sell them by the piece, or are you selling it only as a collection?
I think selling them by the piece would encourage the fans to own them. So yes.
okay.
I like that.
Well, I
Man of
would
the
say
people.
any fans who wanna invest in their future should snap them up, because they're gonna do nothing but go up in value.
Oh, I can imagine.
And that's all I'll
Yeah.
say about that.
Hey, if you're out there, I'd hop on that now, folks. If you're listening, you heard it here first.
Let
You heard it
me
here first.
just get my checkbook.
Yeah.
Big Lebowski references always.
Yeah.
go
You know
for
what to
it.
do with that? Yeah, if you're wondering what to do with that stimulus check, get on eBay.
That stimmy to use. There you go.
Yeah. Bingo.
Well, guys, I have to say this has been an enlightening hour here. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hop on our show and share all the info you did with us. You know, obviously huge fans, and we can't wait to see what you guys have in store. And you know, obviously in the future, if we can, you know, promote anything for you in any way, obviously let us know. But I'll start off. You know, Tony, I know I already follow you guys on all social media, but if someone that does not already follow you guys wants to find Spooky World the movie, where can they do that?
You can find us on Facebook at Spooky World the Movie. You can find us on Instagram at Spooky World the Movie. You can find us on Twitter at Spooky World the One. And you can also find us. We have a website. Our incredible Jen is putting together our website right now. Should be out any day. So that's going to be the mothership where we launch everything out from. So I will keep you folks appraised of that. And
And tell them about Spooky 101.
oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, that little show. Yeah, Spooky 101. We try to put out probably 2 shows a month. I have still about 5 more interviews already recorded, ready to go. And next week, this coming Friday, we'll be putting out the one about Bart and Barb O'Brien and their successful vineyard out in California, and how Spooky World helped launch them into that. So we have a lot more celebrities to go, a lot more folks who built it together. As a matter of fact, the gentleman who commented, Keith Vachon is one of the few people who was actually there the day that the fire marshals decided to exact their will on Spooky World. And I think that folks, I'm going to let folks know about this film. You know, who's to say that one film can contain this?
Oh. How about that?
Just put that out there.
That's all we're going to say about that right now.
That says a lot, though.
I know.
Yeah.
That's exciting stuff. Well, hey, again, I can't thank you guys enough, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I cannot wait to see what you guys have in store for us leading up. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your support. I cannot speak more highly about your podcast, about your support. And I am so happy to know that we will be working with you going forward. And if you hear any breaking news and it's from us, this is where it's going to be.
I'm
Thanks.
so
We appreciate
yeah,
that so much.
completely humbled. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But with that being
Thank
said,
you.
I mean, hey, if you do want more of America's Hometown Horror on social media platforms, you can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Which, if you're watching this episode now, you've already found us. But just go on there, search for America's Hometown Horror, and click subscribe. You'll get all of our posts. You can also tweet at us at Hometown Horror. And you can also find us on Instagram at Hometown Horror Pod. And hell, you know what? If you want to send us an email, you can even do that. Hometown Horror Podcast at gmail.com. And you can also find this show pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. But most specifically Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, and pretty much everywhere else. My name is Mike. I am the host of America's Hometown Horror, and as always, I'm joined by Andrew and Kat, my co-hosts. And wow, what an episode this has been. That's all I can say. It's just wow. Thanks to Quinn. Thanks to Tony.
Yes.
Thanks to David.
Thanks, guys.
Look forward to
thank
speaking
you
with
so
you all
much.
soon. Say bye, everyone. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.